Hello, and welcome back to our podcast, Let's Play It by Ear. I'm your host, Carrie, with my co host here, Joanna.
Hello.
And today, this is our fifth episode of Opus 2. We are talking about whether or not we are, or we feel like we're just one trick ponies,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not we feel like we're just trained for one specific thing, one very, very defined career path. So,
Mm-hmm.
those are the topics we're going to delve into today and a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So, where do we start?
Yeah. Well, um, what do you feel we're trained for as musicians?
So, I think at least our generation of musicians, because I almost kind of feel that our generation of musicians, we're sort of on the cusp of change. And
Mm-hmm.
we our generation is still part of the training where we're mostly just trained to either be a performer, so a solo performer, or an orchestral musician.
Mm-hmm.
And as terrible as it sounds, I felt that the attitude was that if you could do neither of those things, then you could be a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the attitude that was it was still prevalent
Yes.
when we were in school.
I would say nowadays that has definitely changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, definitely, there's a lot more respect for educators these
Yes.
days. And it's really fantastic because, one, it's better for, teachers' mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there is a respect for their time and their education and the skills that they bring to the table. So I am really thankful about that. But that was not the attitude when we were going to school.
No.
So anyone who's listening who's younger than in your 30s, you might have had a different experience in music school. But for anyone who are in their 30s and older, you probably, and if you went to music school, you probably remember this kind of sentiment. It was never overtly stated, but it definitely was implied in the attitude towards educators versus performers. So it definitely made me feel that if I could not do my orchestral excerpts perfectly,
Mm.
if I could not pull off a solo recital flawlessly,
Mm-hmm.
that I would not make it. So my response was to go and find, I guess, like my own corner of the internet, because at that time, YouTube was still really new. YouTube was only a few years old at that point.
Yeah.
And no one trusted YouTube. There's no respect for YouTube whatsoever. There's no such thing as being a content creator. That just was not a thing at that time. But I enjoyed the videos that people were putting out. So that kind of became my creative outlet. And since I didn't really know how to do anything else besides the flute, and even at that, not very well compared to my friends, I was like, well, no one's going to find me here on YouTube anyway. So whatever, like, I'm just going to do my thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, right? Like, my intention was actually just to find a creative outlet in my own little internet cave. I was just trying to find a little like hermit cave on like my little corner of YouTube and just kind of stay there with no intention of blowing up or anything, really. So, with if you have a YouTube channel, especially at that time, it was very popular to also have your own website because your own website could, give a little bit more information about your background. It could, just like it sort of acts as like an online business card in a way. So like, a great way for people to verify that I was a legit flutist was, to have a link to a website from my YouTube channel. They could click through and see that I was for real. So I actually started to also develop my own website, but I was using Weebly because I didn't know how to do HTML coding or anything like that. And Weebly, which I think now recently has been bought out by Square, they had this kind of very simple drag and drop system that has now become very popular in website building because it makes it so that you don't need to know code in order to make a website look presentable. So I started building my own website using that while I was in school. And I would say that most people thought I was wasting my time. We had one professor who noticed, and that was our theory professor. He noticed that I was making my own website. He thought it was very forward thinking, and he really thought it was the future. So he really encouraged me to keep going, even though everyone else thought I was insane. I mean, he later told me that for his own career, most people thought he was insane. So I think when he sees a fellow crazy person, he recognizes, like crazy recognizes crazy, right? So he was like, yeah, do it. Everyone thinks you're insane and wasting your time, but I actually think this is going to go somewhere. I mean, sure enough, that's why I can do what I do. I actually take all of my student applications through my website now. So yeah, like it's one of those things that I was essentially running away to the internet because I felt that I wasn't up to snuff in music school. Like I was very underdog, not that great, slightly below average flutist. And I wasn't a star or anything in school. Like if anyone regarded me as a star, it was only because I was really good at chamber music, not solo music. So, I did feel like a one-trick pony, but I felt like a one-trick pony that was really bad at its one trick.
And wanted to escape to find other tricks.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. With no intention of those other tricks becoming the source of my career. But that's just kind of how it happened. Like it felt weirdly restrictive, not because I was good at the one trick. It felt restrictive because I was bad at the one trick.
I identify with that too because in a way I felt boxed in. Just going to school, or not going to school yet, even just in high school.
Oh,
Like before graduating, like I tell my friends or I tell uncles and aunts like, oh yeah, I'm going to music school. You're doing what? Are you crazy? It's like when you tell people you're going to become a musician, like you said, you can only perform. Really, that's the only viable career path. You're performing either as a soloist or as an orchestral musician. Chamber music wasn't even a huge
no, it wasn't a
thing
huge
back then,
thing.
I don't think.
My quintet made it a huge thing in our school.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a cool move.
I believe it's actually because I did so much of like accidental PR. Like, because I made I had way too much fun making our posters. I did full photo shoots for our wind quintet. We did this stupid thing where we like would put our camera on a tripod and put it on timer, and I'd constantly be running back and forth between in front of the camera to like setting the timer and stuff like that. And but like you're right, chamber music, at least prior to getting into music school, wasn't huge, and it wasn't like, I don't think it was actually very well respected, at least in our circles.
Yeah,
We
I
kind of
mean,
had to earn that respect.
yeah. Well, once I got into university, our bassoon professor introduced us to a bassoon quartet, and
Mm-hmm.
then you come to realize, oh yeah, that's a thing. Like you don't have to play in a huge orchestra or a wind ensemble to be a performing musician. There's a possibility of you doing chamber music. But I
Yep.
mean, even then, going into music school, I felt unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't really know how I succeeded in auditioning to music school. And once I made it there, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely subpar.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
struggled with, like you said, so many of
yeah.
the orchestral excerpts,
Oh my god, yeah.
and by the time we were almost graduating, like, yeah,
I can
yeah,
kind
sure,
of play them.
yeah, like I improved,
Yeah.
yes, but am I going to win a job? No.
Exactly.
So what am I going to do? And I felt very lost,
Yeah.
and but with that, I just felt like I was forced into being a one-trick pony. Not that I could do it, like you said, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just the definition of it. You are a
Yeah.
musician equals you're a performer,
There
and
was
you
really
had to do
no, yeah, because it was almost kind of like the the types of things that we studied
it. Mm-hmm.
were really only solo
Mm-hmm.
and orchestral.
Yeah.
That's it. I legit wasted practice time practicing quintet music. Like I would say, if you're talking about time that I spent practicing in while I was in undergrad, most of it was for chamber music because I actually wanted to do that.
Mm.
But I think I dreaded solo stuff, and I dreaded, oh my god, I dreaded orchestral stuff. Like there was one time we did a one of those studio master classes where just your
Mm-hmm.
studio gets
Yeah.
together. And we had an orchestral excerpt night. And let me tell you, I was so nervous. I was shaking while trying to eat dinner beforehand.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was just dreading it so much because no matter how much I tried to practice, I mean, part of it was practice anxiety where I would just be crippled by anxiety even thinking about practicing the
Mm-hmm.
orchestral excerpt. So, like, I couldn't even focus when I tried practicing it. And then no matter how many times I actually got to practice it, it just never felt like it got better, Like, nothing would get better. It just felt like I was just hitting my head against the wall. And yeah, so like it just felt like I was walking into humiliation, you know?
Mm.
Like I know I'm about to be humiliated. I'm about to humiliate myself, that is, right? In front of my fellow, flutists,
Yeah.
my fellow colleagues. It's the worst feeling. Now, here's something y'all need to remember. My friends in my studio masterclass, I can guarantee you they don't remember how I played. Like this is not about them. This is me. This is not even about my teacher. My teacher probably doesn't even remember how I played in those studio masterclasses, okay? It's really only me. I remember the feeling going into them. I remember feeling like I was about to humiliate myself, and then it became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
I humiliated myself. I felt like I humiliated myself. It was horrifying, Like it legit felt like I was a one-trick pony that was really bad at the one trick that it was supposed to perform.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing either way, there's not going to be a positive outcome.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
Yeah. And like you say, um, so it's like, when you get out of university, it's like, I'm going to now audition with the same orchestral excerpts and win a job.
Yeah, no.
Right?
I mean, I didn't really feel like I knew how to practice the excerpts,
Yep.
to be
Same.
honest.
Yep. Yep.
That was only, I think, in masters that I
Mm-hmm.
sort of came to understand how,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Same. I
otherwise.
kind of went on my own journey exploring how to practice them
Hmm.
long after I graduated from actually both my undergrad and my master's. Now, for my master's, I actually made it very clear to them I never intended on going into a professional orchestra.
Mm.
I should have told them that, and they know this because I originally was supposed to graduate with a chamber music degree. It was supposed to be chamber music, but turns out the artists in residence, um, they are a string quartet, so they
Usually are.
yeah they realized that they couldn't give me the chamber music, the woodwind chamber music training that I deserved from
Mm.
going to school. So they offered me a solo flute instead, solo performance.
Mm.
But because their deal with me was, however, we know that you intended on coming in here for chamber music, so we will provide for you chamber music coaches, and you'll split your time between doing chamber music and solo stuff. How about that?
Oh, that's a good offer.
Yeah, so that's why we basically hardly ever did orchestral stuff in my
Okay.
master's, because I made it very clear from the beginning, I ain't going down that path. You don't even have to think about it, okay?
Okay. Well, they heard you, so
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I'm not doing this.
yeah.
Yeah. It was ironic because we ended up doing big pieces like William Tell and the big
Mm-hmm.
solo in William Tell. So we did William Tell in actual like orchestra. We did we did a bunch of I forget. William Tell is the one that comes to mind because you know what they made us do? They made us take turns doing the solo.
In rehearsal or
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Everyone got a turn because they were like, this is school, so you're going to practice
Yeah.
doing it. And I was like, that's amazing, you know? Like, um, you know, I was thrilled that I chose that school. It's San Francisco State, by the way, if you guys want to know. I was thrilled that that I chose that school because you could really tell that they really had that kind of like educator's heart,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, and it fostered such a great environment there because of it. Everyone was so
Yeah.
sweet, you know. But anyway,
I like
that's
that.
besides the point. Yeah, but it was like, so it was really funny because I was like, I ain't doing orchestra stuff, and I still ended up doing orchestra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was because I at that time no long like felt like I broke away from that one trick. It almost kind of opened me up a little bit more to sort of like actually learning it
Mm-hmm.
without the anxiety,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, then prior to going into university, into undergrad, um, did you feel like you would be a one-trick pony, or did you feel like there were other things you would have been capable of?
I did I definitely did not realize that it would make me feel like it would turn me into a one bad trick pony.
Mm.
Uh I didn't foresee that feeling.
Okay.
It did take me by surprise. But I think when I was in high school, I'm gonna bet it was more that I was so wrapped up with doing so many things. Like
Mm.
school was insanely busy. I was doing IB, International Baccalaureate, which is, essentially one of those like accelerated programs, those like honors programs types of stuff. And so I was insanely busy. It just took up so much of my time and energy that I almost had no time to consider
Mm.
what music school would turn me into. So it took me by surprise.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
Um, well, I think throughout high school, I didn't go to an IB program, actually, but my high school now has been turned into an IB school. So
I mean, you basically went to IB then.
I missed it by I think a year or two. So
Yeah.
I escaped kind of.
Yeah.
Um, I like we were required to do volunteer work. So
Mm,
my parents encouraged me to do to experience fields that were outside of music.
mm,
And even for summer jobs when I went back home during university.
mm.
So yes, I felt like a one-trick pony, but at the back of my mind, I knew there were other experiences that I could draw on to maybe hope to expand.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me a little bit of hope, but that didn't mean I felt any sense of direction at all.
Oh, interesting.
It was just like a teeny, teeny, tiny bag of extra tricks.
Right.
I don't know whether or not if they would work.
I see. So like when you left school, so when you graduated,
Hmm.
what happened after that? Like with music, finding a
Um,
job.
well, after finishing masters, so 6 years of
Hmm.
postgraduate,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
no, post secondary.
Yeah.
Sorry, post secondary schooling. Um, I went back to one of the fields that I felt the most drawn to during my volunteer days, I guess, in high school, and that was
Hmm.
working with children. So that's why I decided to study towards an early childhood education. It's not a degree, but certification.
Hmm.
So I became an ECE teacher,
Hmm.
but I still taught music in that school in a way.
Hmm. Hmm. Did you try to make music full time at any point?
Um, Music was always there
Yeah.
to a certain degree. I would teach piano,
Hmm.
and I mean, bassoon students are few and far between.
Yeah.
Um, so whenever I had bassoon students, I would teach them as well too, of course. But it was
Hmm.
never really full time. So it was a
Mm.
combination of both being an ECE teacher and teaching music. And then when when I was able to make a little bit more connections, and that's when freelance started.
Mm.
So I started being able to play with orchestras and other maybe chamber ensembles, chamber-sized
Hmm.
orchestras. Not so
Hmm.
much chamber music, but yeah.
Hmm. So music has actually never been full time.
No, unfortunately, not exactly.
And there's, I mean, you could call it fortunate or unfortunate. It really depends on how you see it.
Yeah. I mean, it is still a part of my career, so I'll say I'm
Yeah.
fortunate in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean, there's also the, the idea that you have other skills and
Mm.
you can be hired to do other things besides music. So, like, that, if I'm being completely honest, is an out that I wish that I always had. But to this day, I don't have it. I legit have no other skills besides music. I
Yeah.
don't know if you can call content creation a different skill. I would say that other people would say that is a different skill.
Hmm.
However, the the foundation of my content, the actual content itself, is music.
Hmm.
So I can't really exactly make much content about really much else. So, well, I can if I wanted to, but all those other things that I could make content for, like let's say I played video games and streamed that, or let's say I did skincare stuff. Let's say I talked about Like I just made a video about topical steroid withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly it was just to educate people about the condition and also to let people know why I was gone for so long. But like I could go more into that, but it's like, do I really want to? That gets kind of personal. I really just wanted to make that video just to communicate to people why I was gone for so long.
Yeah.
The point of it wasn't for, you know, like, oh, I'm like a skincare content creator now, you know, like it's not that at all. And I recognize that my content, the content that really takes off in my kind of like my little corner of the internet are flute-based, music-based content, right?
Yeah.
So that makes me think, well, if I didn't have music, then I literally have no skills. Like, you know, like I guess I have video editing skills, but that's all self-taught. I didn't go to school. Like so I think like, I think it's weird because you could say that I do full-time, I'm a full-time musician, but I'm definitely not a full-time musician in the traditional sense. And I can tell you that from this end, as a full-time musician, there is always that seed of doubt of like, can I actually do this until the end of my career? Can I actually do this? Can I actually sustain this until I retire?
Right.
I don't have an out.
Yeah. Actually, you brought up a good point. When I was working in the ECE field, it's quite physical. I mean, you have to lift the children, you have to help them dress in a way. You have to care for them. Bend up, bend down, go up and down stairs as well in the school and play with them, run around, everything. You said, could I do this until the end of my career? My answer really quickly was no.
No.
Because my knees started hurting, my back started hurting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a 32-year-old, 80-year-old woman in a way.
You know, if I don't do my stretches at least 3 times a week, I get tight and I will get like, I'll pull muscles.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a side note, everyone listening and watching, exercise is very important.
Yeah. Please exercise, even if it's just walking 30 minutes, you know, a day, 5 days a week. Even that will just make you a lot fitter.
Just to get your blood circulating.
Yeah, like you don't even have to go crazy with push-ups or sit-ups or lifting weights or anything. You don't have to do any of that. It's really just move.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I decided, okay, this is not good for my body. I need to find an out.
Oh.
And that's why I decided to explore something I never thought I would, a desk job. Because that has more longevity, right? As you age, you can still sit. And that's why I decided to pursue the communications degree. So I guess, like you said, you felt you don't really have any other skills to fall back on.
Yeah.
Maybe for me, I was too scared and I wanted to stuff more in my bag. And that's why I did early childhood education and communication. So things that I could fall back on, which is not really a fallback on because, like you said, I am very fortunate to be able to do what I am doing now. And I do work in a music school full time. So arguably, I guess you could say I am full time in the music field.
You are. Yeah, you are full time in the music field.
Yeah.
It's so weird though, because I would say like both of us are essentially doing the same thing. We are full time doing something in the music field. So you could say that we are full time musicians, but
in the non-traditional way.
It's very non-traditional, at least in the way that it's perceived. You know, it's not like, you know, admin for a music school didn't exist. It's not like that didn't exist since music schools have been around ever for hundreds of years, right? Like there's always been admin of some sort in music schools, right? Like, it's weird that for some reason we never considered that those jobs have existed for literally hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, I primarily teach. That's
Mm-hmm.
most of what I do is private flute lessons, but it just so happens that they're done online, right?
Mm.
So it's like private flute teaching also is a job that has existed for hundreds if not thousands of years, right? And yet it was weirdly not considered a viable, or not viable, that's not the right word, it's not considered a respected
Yeah.
career path
Or
for a musician.
proper
Yeah,
path,
the
maybe?
expected one, the you've made it path,
Yeah.
you know.
I don't know.
Yeah, right. So I don't know, like, so how do you feel now with where you are with this whole one trick business?
Um, I sort of feel I'm no longer one trick, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I have multiple tricks, but part of me really wants to make sure that all of the tricks, I can perform them equally well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pressure I put on myself to
Mm-hmm.
actually be able to perform. But again, perform in a
Yeah,
different sense, though.
yeah, yeah.
But what about you? What do you feel like you would have wanted to do outside of music or
uh
other than music to either add on or something to
yeah.
fall back on?
Like if I were to go back, I would have taken acting classes. I would have taken acting classes. I would have taken also like film
Mm,
classes. So like
yeah.
I'm actually a giant nerd when it comes to that stuff. Like for example, just now we were my husband and I were watching the behind the scenes for, yeah, I'm a behind the scenes nerd. I've pretty much memorized all of the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes. Um, but yeah, we were watching the behind the scenes for an animated series that is based on a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that was made very popular on the internet. They're called Critical Role. And we're big fans, and we actually backed their animated series, The Legend of Vox Machina. And so we got to see an early screening of it because we're backers. And so we watched it, I think, was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. I think it was the day before. And today we watched the behind the scenes of it. And I recognized a good number of the big stars that they got into play, and one of the big stars that they got into play was actually the actor who played Mary in the Lord of the Rings, Dominic Monaghan. Yeah, and like when I found out that he was actually one of the voices, I like freaked out. And then also they got David Tennant to be one of the voices as well. He's one of the Doctor Who's.
Mm.
And so like I freaked out too, and like my husband just, he cannot recognize actors or voices and stuff like that. So I'm sitting there like freaking out, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, they got these like huge names to do this. And he's just like, cool. Yeah,
Who?
cool. Yeah, cool. You know? Yeah. But yeah, so like I'm a giant nerd about that stuff, and I always have been, and I think I always will be. So like if I went back, I definitely would have taken film courses,
Mm.
probably video editing courses, and acting.
Yeah.
I definitely would have branched into that stuff, but I almost kind of felt like I would be sort of betraying my musical path. I don't know if you felt that.
Yes, there was a bit of part of me that felt like if I wanted to do something, I was like, no, I'm not being a true musician. I need to stick to that one direction.
Yeah, and so I was I, I always put it off in my head as oh, this is just my side nerd thing.
Mm.
But I think if I went back, I would have taken courses.
Yeah, I think you would have really enjoyed it, actually.
Honestly, I don't mean to like, you know, like sound prideful about this, but I honestly think I would have done really well.
I believe you.
Yeah, like it's stuff that I'm a huge nerd about.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I think back, this is how I kind of arrived at my, I guess you could call it internet persona. The way that I talk when I'm streaming and when I'm making videos. I watched, and over, I would watch TV hosts. So I watched a lot of Craig Ferguson. He's kind of crass, all right, but he has a heart of gold, and he did some stellar interviews. He actually won a Peabody Award for his interview with Desmond Tutu.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched that interview over and over and over again. And I watched his interviews with other people because just the way that he would disarm them, get them to let their guards down, and it's amazing, like he has a skill that I was like, I want this skill.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I must have spent hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, just rewatching. I would rewatch episodes over and over just to pick up on how he says things, how he, like I basically studied Craig Ferguson, like I could I can't do it now because I haven't seen his stuff in a long time. But at that time, I probably could have taught a course on Craig Ferguson, and like thinking back, I'm like, I essentially was self-studying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a way, I guess we're kind of past that schooling age, if we want to say, and we're more or less entrenched in our careers right now. But I feel like we shouldn't be too afraid to explore if we wanted to. And I think nowadays we are very lucky. We do have the resources online.
Yeah.
If we want to learn a different skill set. And if you want to pursue it further, there are always other colleges there offering certification. And that, I think that was something that wasn't really recognized when we were in school as well too. Like certification, what do you mean certification? You need to get a degree. But no, like if you go to a technical college now, you can come up with a really good skill set that will set you up for a successful career.
Arguably these days, if you go to a technical school and you come out with like a practical certificate, you're probably going to first get a job before everyone else, and two, you're probably going to make more money than most other people these days. That's just kind of where the world is going right now. The world is almost oversaturated with fresh college kids.
Yeah.
Which that's what we were. And I think that's why we ended up going into what we went into, because it's just too saturated.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's not to say that graduating with a university degree is bad. It's just that we have to recognize there are many different intelligences, many different people, many different viable career paths. And your path may not be the way of someone else's, vice versa, but just don't feel like you're a one-trick pony and you have to be boxed into that one role. You have the freedom to explore, I guess.
Like, to be fair, right? You as admin in a music school, the fact that you are a musician, that actually makes a huge difference, right? Because when you're, like making arrangements for rooms for people, for rehearsals, lessons, etc., when you're, doing that type of stuff, there you have a much better understanding of what is actually happening during those times than if you were just some random person, like hired who has no exposure to music. There would be a lot of miscommunication with that person, right? Like having this experience and knowing what in what being a musician entails,
Mm-hmm.
that absolutely gives you a leg up in performing your job well, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, if I didn't have a master's in what I do, I don't know if really anybody online would believe what I have to say about the flutes.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, so like you make a really good point in that it's not that your training in music school is bad. It's
Mm-hmm.
more that we really need to open our eyes to the fact that you can receive the same training, but it can have very different applications in the future.
Yeah.
Right?
Take the different aspects of it and apply it to the areas that you want to go into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you don't even have to really do it consciously, I find.
Yeah.
I find that it's one of those things where it's like you go into whatever it is you want to do, you'll find out that because you're educated in music, you have a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So for both of our careers, that has been the case.
Yes.
The fact that we both have masters in our respective instruments performance major, you know, the fact that we both have masters in that makes a huge difference in our career,
Yes.
right? Because honestly, if we didn't, I don't know if we would be as good as we are in our careers.
Yeah. So education is important.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, definitely, I'm still working through the one trick pony anxiety.
That's okay. We all have things we're working on in life, I think. You'll never run out of things to work on.
Yeah, no. You know, there's always room to grow, right? So
That's a
anyway,
good message.
before we, open Pandora's box and go deeper, I think this is a good place to stop. What do you think?
I think so too.
Okay, well, for everyone listening, we thank you for listening. We thank you for just hearing us out. And we would love to hear back from you guys too, because every time we do these freaking episodes, Carrie and I, after we turn off the cameras, or that is after I stop recording on OBS, we're always like, I didn't know you thought that too. And so even we don't know that we're thinking the exact same things as each other. And so we want to know if you guys share a similar experience, or if you share a very different experience. We also want to hear that too. So please email us at letsplayitbyear.podcast@gmail.com, as Carrie is holding up to the camera. So we have an email there. Please email us if you have any experiences to share with us. We are also on the social medias. So we are on Instagram.
Instagram.
Let's Play It By Ear Podcast. We're on Twitter at let_ear, but you'll see us listed as Let's Play It By Ear Podcast. And we're on the Facebook, Let's Play It By Ear Podcast. And if you want to, if you're on YouTube and you want to listen to this via podcast style, you can find us at anchor.fm/Let's Play It By Ear Podcast. I believe is Let's Play It By Ear Podcast, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you're on the podcast listening area and you want to find us on YouTube, we are at Let's Play By Ear Podcast on YouTube. Just search us up on YouTube and you will find us. We also have a website, letsplayitbyear.com. I think I did it, Carrie.
Yes, you did.
Yay! All right, guys. So thank you again for listening. We will catch you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
See you.